All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. Thanks for joining us for our webinar, SDLC Project Management with the Atlassian Toolset. We'll be recording this session, and we'll go ahead and submit a link to the recording over the next few days. So just a quick note, our next webinar is going to be on January 28th, so it's a little bit off schedule from our normal monthly webinars. But our very own Amanda Babb will be co-hosting Atlassian's Confluence Questions webinar. She'll be addressing how dev teams can leverage Confluence questions to help build a knowledge base and best practices in engineering. As you have questions, please be sure to provide them via the questions utility in the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll queue them up and answer them towards the end of the session. So on the phone today from Precipio Consulting, we have Hope Parrish. Hope is a Senior Solutions Architect at Precipio Consulting, and she'll be presenting today's webinar. And myself, Shayla Sander. I'm a Business Development Manager for Precipio Consulting, and I'll be serving as your moderator. So we've been Atlassian Expert Partners for over 7 years now, and are one of 8 Platinum Enterprise Experts in the country. Over 99% of our projects are Atlassian related, and we have hundreds of clients across the U.S., ranging in size from 20-person companies to Fortune 20 enterprises, spanning many different industries. We help our clients with process-centric technology solutions that facilitate traditional business process management, IT service management based on ITIL, and software development life cycles. In the SDLC space, we're helping clients transition from waterfall to agile. So whatever widgets you produce, we help improve the quality and throughput at the lowest cost. We support our clients in all facets of the Atlassian product suite and build methodologies and solutions across the entire product line. This includes solutions architecting and implementations, licensing, upgrades and maintenance, solutions, managed services, hosting, add-on development, and of course, training. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Hope to lead us through today's webinar.
Thank you, Shayla. My name is Hope Parrish. I'm a project manager within Precipio Consulting. I'm a senior solutions architect, and I'm going to be going through several items today to help you track project traceability, especially around requirements and system development lifecycle. So what we're going to be covering is SDLC. What is SDLC? And specifically, we're going to look at the SDLC methodology of Agile SCRUM. We'll talk about requirement traceability and how you can use the integration between Confluence and JIRA for full implementation and requirement traceability from inception to closure. We'll take a look at how you can plan, work, and track using the SCRUM boards that are available with JIRA Agile. We'll also take a look at tempo and how you can utilize tempo for resource management. We'll take a look at some of these status reports that are available so that you can also track testing and defect tracking. And then finally, we'll look at how all this rolls up to a project portfolio using JIRA's portfolio. And at the very end, we'll go ahead and we'll open up for questions. So feel free to go ahead and type your questions into the webinar chat section, and we will get to those at the end of today's session. So what is the difference between project management and SDLC? Did you know that there was a difference? Project management basically is the guidelines that you give to a project manager for managing your tasks, your resources, your quality, and making sure that your project is on time and on budget. SDLC, however, though, is system development lifecycle. It provides a framework for the construction of your delivery. It's your design, it's your development, it's your testing, it's your implementation, and it's your upgrade activities that happen post-delivery. PMLC is the guidelines and the controls for delivery of the project with quality measurements. You have quality measurements as part of your milestones and your deliverables that are implemented. You either do this with, again, with your deliverables, your milestones, but ultimately it's with your schedule and your budget. The main focus for project management lifecycle is to make sure that your project is on time and on budget. System development lifecycle actually has 7 formalized methodologies. I've just listed a few here that are probably some of the most common, such as waterfall. You have an incremental delivery, or an agile-like, as it's also referred to. And then Agile within itself has several different methodologies that have been defined, such as SCRUM, adaptive software development, feature-driven development, and so on. There's also the joint applications development, where you have a series of applications that are integrated together and you're doing a delivery for system integration. We're going to focus today on SCRUM. So let's just talk about Scrum Agile 101 before we get started today, just to make sure that we've gone through some of the concepts, the terminology. You have backlog grooming. So backlog grooming is a series of meetings that you would do. It's not a formal part of the process, but it is recommended. It's done by your product owner, your Scrum team, your Scrum masters, and what you do is you estimate what it is to do your stories, and you clarify the requirements with the product owner. You do sprint planning. So sprint planning is also a series of meetings that you would have. They're breakout sessions. You create stories into technical tasks, and you do commitments to the completion. What is it going to take to deliver this effort? Now that I'm clear on what the requirements are. You have a series of daily meetings that you would do, what we call stand-up meetings. In these stand-up meetings, what you would do is define what are the tasks that I did yesterday, what roadblocks may I have in completing my task for today, and you also define any retrospectives that you may have. You define what your sprints are going to be. So the sprints are the work, the commitment to completing the work, and your iterations. And at the end of each sprint, it is recommended that you do a retrospective. So what is the retrospective? The retrospective is just defining what worked well, what didn't work well, and what actions can I put in place to make sure that it works well the next time around. Let's talk about the roles of the team. You have a product owner. This is basically your point person within your stakeholders. They meet with the stakeholders, they gather the requirements, and they're your go-to person for clarification. You have the Scrum Master. This is your person who's leading the effort. They facilitate all your meetings. They protect the team. It is their responsibility to put down the roadblocks. And then you have your Scrum team. This is the people who are doing the work. You set the estimation as part of the team. You're defining what you are committing to for the work, so someone's not committing you to that work. There are three main issue types that you can use into the Agile Scrum process. They are the epic, which is the large piece of work within your product backlog, but you typically break these down into smaller pieces of work, such as the story. The story also is known as the user story. It's the features and the functions that need to be estimated. And then you have your technical tasks or tasks and subtasks. And these are the breakdown of the work breakdown structure within your epic or your large initiative that you're actually performing to make sure that you're breaking this down into tangible efforts of work that you can actually complete. One thing that I did want to point out is there has been some skepticism over Agile and whether it provides business value and if it actually does provide any improvement on the return of investment. I did want to point out that there's been a study since 2009 and conducted every year since 2009 by the University of Maryland, where they took 32 different data points and they proved that the return on investment from an Agile-like project to a traditional project actually has almost a 10% or a 10 times greater value in a return on investment. There's also risk mitigation. Regardless of whether you're doing project management or you're doing SDLC, you have the same common pitfalls that you need to be watching out for. You need to manage and be looking out for these risks and putting the roadblocks down so that you don't incur any of the risks, so that the risks don't become issues. What are those? Lack of end user involvement. So you need to have good collaboration. You need to have visibility within your team. You need to have communication within your team. Lack of management. You need to have a process in place. You need to have support from upper management. Resources are not available. They're not available either to do the tasks or you don't have the skill sets necessary to do the project work. Lack of budget, lack of portfolio management. If you're managing a program or you're managing a portfolio and you have a set of projects within your portfolio, you need to be able to oversee the budget that you're maintaining across those efforts. Let's talk about the product requirements management. Let's talk about how we can utilize the integration between Confluence and JIRA to do requirement traceability. Confluence provides a series of blueprints, also known, another word would be known as templates, that have pre-defined functionality embedded within them to help you ramp up and get into play much faster than you would by developing things from scratch. One of those blueprints that we're discussing today is the product requirements blueprint. This blueprint helps you define who your stakeholders are, what your scope is, what's the status of your requirements, and any details that developers might need to actually work the requirements. You have a page properties that we see in the top screenshot that we see here. This lets me know what is the scope of my requirements, who my stakeholders are that are involved, and what the status is of the document, the actual requirements. In the bottom screenshot, you see this is where we list our series of requirements. What is the title of our requirements? What is the user story that's related to the requirements? Any other pertinent information that we may need. We can track releases, we can track bugs, we can track decisions, and more with the product requirements blueprint. The integration within JIRA can also show us the navigation directly into the system to the issue that's been created for that particular requirement, and it shows me what the status is of that particular requirement. Let's do a demonstration. So your Confluence is your collaboration space. Some may also refer to it as a document repository, but it's much more than that. You can collaborate, show visibility, you can track discussions, which is much more than what a document repository would do. So once I've defined my space for my particular project or the initiative that I'm working on, I can go ahead and start my product requirements blueprint. I select the create to choose from a list of blueprints that are available, and I select the product requirements blueprint. This will take me to my editing page where I construct my product requirements blueprint. The first thing I'm going to do is provide a title. And then the next thing I can do is I can assign what the target release is, or I can go ahead and I can create the epic that's going to be associated with my product requirements. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new issue for my product requirements. We'll give it the requirement 1 so that it matches the title of my product requirements blueprint. And the description. Right now my document is in a draft state. I can choose to edit this as I'm completing the document, and I can change it from a draft to in progress to complete state. We're going to leave it in draft for right now. I can define who my designer is by using the @mention feature, who my developers are by using the @mention feature, who my QA testers would be also as my lead tester. So I have all my stakeholders identified. I can list what the goals are. What is the goal for the outcome for this particular product requirement? We want to reduce the number of clicks it takes to create an issue. If I have a strategic fit or I want to list any justification, why am I doing this particular requirement? I could list that in the strategic fit section. I also have a section for assumptions. It's very good to list assumptions within your requirement, so that way you're clear for your developers on what assumptions you may have. So you may have an assumption such as, my assumption is to reduce the amount of clicks so that I can implement an issue within less than 60 seconds. That may be an assumption. Now let's go ahead and let's identify our requirements. So we want to have a requirement of auto name designation. So we want to be able to pick the name from a drop-down list. I want to have another requirement for auto address check. We want to have address validation performed against a national database such as Melissa data. And one last one we'll go ahead and create. Auto notifications. We want to have optional ability to receive a notification via the user properties. So now I've listed my requirements. So now it's time to go ahead and do the integration point. You highlight the title. First we need to save. We go to our requirements section. We highlight the title. And when you hover over with your mouse, you'll get these two options available to you. One is to list a comment, and one is to actually go ahead and create the JIRA issue. So let's create the JIRA issue. It already pre-populates the summary with the title information, and then I can list more details for my description if I choose so. Let's go ahead and do that for all three of these. You see that a ticket was created. I've got the link that goes directly to my ticket, and it also shows me the status for that particular ticket. And our last one. Let's go ahead and let's navigate into JIRA and see what these look like. By selecting the link that's created within Confluence, that gives me that direct integration into the JIRA issue tracking system. Here I can go ahead and I can add additional labels if I choose so. I can add actual labels. So if I want to label this user interface or whatever other labels that you'd like to use. You can see that my issue is in open status. And let's take a look at this issue link section. This shows me my link directly back to my Confluence page. Let's go ahead and select that. And look, I've navigated directly back to my product requirements page. So I have that seamless integration and that traceability. Let's start the status of this particular issue. So I've started the status. I've started work on this issue. My status has changed to in progress. Let's go back to our product requirements page. I can now see on my product requirements page my status update. So I have that real-time integration, that traceability of the requirement from inception, creation, all the way to completion. In addition, on the product requirements blueprint, I have a section that's labeled for user interaction and design. Here I can list process flows, information that's necessary for my developers to help them work the issue. I can also list any questions and decisions that have been made in my meetings or discussions that have taken place for clarification on this particular requirement. There's also a section for not doing. you can list items that you can be very clear about. These are things that are not in scope so that you don't revisit those at a later time and waste valuable time within your project. One other thing I'd like to go ahead and show you with the Confluence page is you can also create status reports. So the status reports are very useful not only in tracking your issues, but you can also use them if you're using issue types of bug for defects that are found. You can track your testing and your defect tracking. We can do that by creating and using another blueprint called JIRA Reports. So when I select JIRA Reports, I've got a couple options that are available to me. One is a change log, where I could keep track of my release management, and the other is the status report. You pick the project. If you want to track a particular version, you could select a particular version that you track. But we're just going to go ahead and pull everything for this particular project. I've got 34 issues that have been created against this particular project. And then you can see here on my editing page, I've got 4 charts that are available to me. They're currently pulling the status of overall, status by priority, status by component, and status by issue type. I can choose to edit a filter just by clicking within the area of the chart and selecting edit. I'm going to go ahead and pull these as they are just to show you how they'll display on the page. But this is a definite way that you could actually track your bugs that you have on the project as well. And so now I have a status report page that's been created. I've got my 4 charts that easily show me what my status is for my 34 issues. By overall status, how many are open, how many are in progress, how many are closed, how many are pending closed. I can view them by priority. So if I have a lot of high priority, I know that I need to address those quickly. I could view those by component. So if I had different component leads and they want to track where they're standing on the overall project, they could use that chart. And then I also have my issue type. And so here would be an area where I would see how many bugs that I would have related to the project. And then I could select those bugs and go ahead and work those and manage those into releases. So let's talk about task estimating and working. Do you like board games? Everybody likes board games. We're specifically going to be talking about a SCRUM board. Not so much of a game, but it is fun just the same. So what the SCRUM board does provide to you is a way to manage your backlog into sprints and working those sprints. So again, you can plan, you can work, and you can report on those sprints that you are working. I have filters that are available to me. I have 2 by default, only my issues and recently updated, but I can create quick filters as well. I simply drag and drop my backlog items into a sprint and start that sprint. I do estimating in my backlog grooming meetings where I estimate what it is that I'm committing to complete the work of each of these tasks. That will define the timing it takes for this particular sprint to execute. You want to keep your sprints into 2 weeks or less. Again, I can manage my backlog by creating sprints. I can also do estimating from the SCRUM board, so I can estimate what the commitment is that I am committing to complete the work for each of the tasks. Let's do a demonstration. Okay, so here on the SCRUM board, I have my epics or my versions that'll be listed on the left. When I select each one of those, it'll show me what sprints I have available for those. Let's select all. Any issues that I have in my backlog will be down below under backlog, and I can simply drag and drop these up into a sprint as I choose to after I've done my estimation for those particular items. Then I can choose to start my sprint once I've created my sprint. As you can see over here on the side, there's numbers in the little gray boxes. Those are the estimations of what it takes to actually do the work. So for this particular item, I don't have anything listed. Once I select on this particular item, I can go over here to the right and I can estimate for this particular item. By putting a number in the estimated location. And once that's done, I can go ahead and add it to a sprint and start a particular sprint. Once I've started the sprint, it'll show up on my work section. And this is where I can see which items are to do, in progress, if I've added a column of testing, such as we see here, in testing, and which are done. In my planning meetings, if items haven't been updated by my resources who are working the issues, I can simply move them to the location that they need to be to, so I can go ahead and make those updates in my planning sessions as well. So not only do my resources man the issues, but I can do that in my daily stand-up meetings as well. I have reports that are available to me. I have a burn down chart that's already been pre-configured with the Scrum boards, where I can track the status of my sprints, or I can track the status of my epic as a whole. Let's take a look at the epic report. Okay. So that's how we utilize JIRA Agile to manage our Scrum sprints within the Scrum boards. Let's talk about resource management. Let's find your tempo. Using tempo for resource capacity, time entry, and feed it into a financial tracking system. So Tempo provides two different plugins. One is Tempo Timesheets and one is Tempo Planner. Tempo Timesheets provides an integrated timesheet system that allows you to enter time in a timesheet view and do reporting and resource management upon your issues that have been assigned to your resources. By utilizing this, you can keep track of your actuals to your forecast by resources entering their time and the remaining forecast for the work on that particular issue. You also have Tempo Planner. So Tempo Planner provides you the means to manage at a team level. I can create a team either as a resource manager, or I can create a team as a project manager, and I can look at the availability of my resources either by named resources or by skill sets of resources. I can view that in a daily, a weekly, a monthly, or a quarterly view. As we can see here from the screenshot in the below pane, I can see that Gabrielle has no availability of hours on the week of August 18th. But I can also see that Lars Peterson has been over allocated by 2 hours. One of the things that you can do when you're creating your teams is you can create a contingency. So if you want to list your resources as only 90% available, that gives you the ability to manage where you have resources come in at just a small over allocation, such as 2 hours, and you can make adjustments for that. Or you can go ahead and negotiate with your project managers either for more time or additional resources. Let's do a demonstration. Tempo is again as an add-on, and that's why you see it as an additional menu item. So let's go to Tempo Timesheets first. So now I see the timesheet for myself, for Hope Parish. These are all the tasks that I've been assigned to for each project. Where you see the yellow across my timesheet, this is hours that have been planned for me. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to charge time for one of my items. I'm going to list the amount of hours worked. I'm going to state whether it's billable or not, and these are optional fields that you can have that come directly with Tempo Timesheets. You can enter a description if that's part of your process. One of the fields you have available to you is rate if you want to choose to use that. I'm going to go ahead and log the work. So now that I've logged the work, you can see that the color has changed from yellow to green. That indicates that time has been charged against that task. Also, with every timesheet, whether you're looking at it a project or a team or a user view, at the very bottom you're going to have a summary. The summary is going to show you what work has been worked and then what was planned. Let's change this to a team view. So here's a team view, and this one's a great one to actually show. I've got lots of colors on this screen. I can see where resources have charge time, but I can also see in red where I can see resources were planned for time where they didn't have time available, so they were over allocated. Either they worked overtime, which could have been the case, or they were planned for time on a day that they didn't have hours available. This is another way that you could utilize the timesheet view for resource capacity planning. But here I've created a team of MVP Team 2. I've listed my resources, and so as the manager or the team lead, team manager, I can view the timesheets for my particular team. I could also utilize this to make sure that I can see that everyone has charged their time. As we can see here, there's one resource, myself, who didn't charge time on a particular day. It may be because I had extra hours on a day after that. But that way I can also be managing my resources to be entering their time on a regular basis based on what my business process period is for time recording. Let's take a look at the team view. So Tempo's Planner does provide you the ability to create a team and manage your team against their work for capacity planning. So here's a team that's been created. Here's the projects that they're associated to. I have a planning board that's available to me that's much like my Scrum board, where I can drag and drop my backlog into the dates of when we're actually planning to do that work. Just dragging and dropping into the dates for that particular resource. And choose a different team that's got some hours available. On my team utilization and my team capacity, this is where I would see resources, whether they're over allocated or under allocated. I can see Elroy Jetson for my Scrum Team 1 does not have any availability of hours for the week of January 5th for this week. But I also see that he's not been over allocated either. I can change this view to be daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly. Yep. Okay. And so that's how Tempo can help you with your capacity planning. So let's talk about portfolio management. So what is portfolio management? It's just a centralized management of processes, methods, and technologies used by project managers, whether you're tracking to a program or whether you're tracking to a strategic portfolio. Project portfolio management provides, again, project managers basically, but it doesn't have to just be project managers. It can also be strategic leaders as well. Project-driven organizations with the capabilities needed to manage the time, the resources, the skills, and the budgets necessary to accomplish all interrelated tasks. It provides a framework for issue resolution and risk mitigation, as well as the centralized visibility to help planning and scheduling teams to identify the fastest, the cheapest, or the most suitable approach to deliver projects and programs. You have available to you what we call the strategic view. Am I tracking to what the goals were from the organization strategy view. We have a set of goals for next year's fiscal year. We want to be able to do 15% of new features. We want 35% of performance improvements, and we want to be able to handle 40% of upgrades. I want to be able to track my resources, my people. Am I over allocated? Am I under allocated? What skill sets do I need? What are they working on? I want to be able to track my releases. With each of my releases, I can track the start and the end date. I can track it by dynamic or by fixed. I also want to be able to track the roadmap. Do I want to view things at the sprint level? Do I want to be able to track things on a Gantt level for a time box? JIRA Portfolio will provide you all of these views that are configurable for each of the initiatives that you include within a portfolio. Initiatives are your epics. Initiatives could be projects. You would include each one of those into your JIRA Portfolio, and you could track them with each of these views. Let's do a demonstration. So I've got a pre-configured portfolio for today's webinar. Within this portfolio, we're taking a look right now at all the initiatives that have been included within a portfolio. So I've got 3 different projects that you can see here. This is related to a Star Trek theme. So I've got the actual enterprise itself. So we may be making some improvements or performance enhancements to the actual starship of NCC 1701 for you Trekkies out there. I've also got my Starfleet Academy initiative. So these are either new features, upgrades, exploration for my Starfleet Academy. And then I've got a loyalty program that's been added as well. I want to increase the work speed. I list my theme. My themes are my strategic efforts, my strategic goals, so that I can track my portfolio and how it's tracking against the company's strategy for the year. How do I add things within my portfolio? Well, there's 2 ways. I can either add by importing issues, by selecting the Import Issues feature. By default, this is going to select every single issue type that's in the system, so I'll have to filter that down by selecting the box next to the issue type. Or I can go ahead and add directly and plan directly from my JIRA portfolio by creating the epic. I can create my epic, and then I can plan the details for that particular, all of the tasks that go with that epic. I define who my people are. I create a series of teams and assign the team members to the tasks. Here on the people view, I can view to see if I have resources that are over allocated, or if I have resources that have not been assigned to a particular effort. I would see if something hasn't been assigned yet. Under my releases is where I can configure how I want my releases to be managed. Do I want those to be fixed by fixed dates? Do I have set milestones that I need to adhere to? Or do I want them to be dynamic? Do I want them to start 1.5 days after a particular task ends, like we see here for our dynamic roles? This helps me in the planning and the forecasting of what it's going to take to do my initiatives. What is my timeline going to be? I also have a grid view available below. I can make adjustments here as well by moving things within the grid. I have these available to me on a bar chart, on a chart. I can view them with cards. I can view them on a timeline, or I can view the sprints. Under my report section, this is where I can see where my themes, where my schedule, and where my releases are tracking. So again, I had a goal for the year for 15% target for new features, but it looks like that my portfolio is projecting a 42%. When I hover over my particular item, it's going to bring up a box to show me some of the details for my item. So I've definitely met my goal there for new features. Performance looks low. So I'm currently under what my target goal is for performance. So that way, the next item that comes up in my portfolio list, or if I need to add another initiative because I've got resource capacity to my portfolio, I'm probably going to take a look at performance efforts because I need to meet my target goal of 35%. You have charts available to you for the tracking so that you can see that in a visibility state as well. They track to what your target is, my target against my estimate, and then targets with actual. Again, I could use that in a pie chart, or I can use that in a bar chart. I prefer the pie chart because the pie chart gives you a great estimation, a great visibility, as opposed to the bar chart. So let's just do a recap for today. So we talked about the differences between project management and a system development lifecycle. We talked about how to use the Confluence and JIRA integration, specifically the product requirements blueprint, for managing the traceability of product requirements. We talked about the use of the Agile SCRUM boards for task estimating and executing, so the planning and the work. We talked about using Tempo for resource capacity planning, both for Tempo timesheets and Tempo Planner. Then we talked about how that rolls up to portfolio management using JIRA Portfolio, another great add-on for JIRA. Some additional resources that I did want to recommend to everyone. The Atlassian website has some great user guides, both at a user level and an administrator level. They have those available for Confluence, for JIRA Agile, for Tempo, and for JIRA Portfolio, for all the things that you saw today. I also wanted to let everybody know that coming soon, later this month, Precipio Consulting will have their own training site. We'll have self-paced training, we're going to have virtual-led classroom training, and we're also going to be doing quarterly boot camps to get your users to become a JIRA expert. Okay, let's go ahead and let's talk about questions. What questions do we have?
Thanks, Hope. So we do have one question from Mike. It says, is there overlap between Tempo and JIRA Portfolio?
There is some overlap in the sense that you could use one or the other, or you can use both. That's with Tempo Planner, because Tempo Planner does allow you to do some of the Scrum boarding. Some of the things that you don't get with obviously with the Scrum boards is the timesheet view, and being able to, you can also, one of the things I didn't mention is you can extract some reports so that you can feed those into your financial system. So there's a difference there.
Great, thanks. So we have another question from Sarah. Can these PM tools work for waterfall, or are they agile only?
No, you can use these both for waterfall-like projects as well. So the JIRA Portfolio, one of the things that you can do for releases, instead of listing them as like release 1, 2, 3, you could use your releases for your phases. So the phases could be planning, etc. So you can use it for both.
Okay, I have a question from Sue. You listed Folio on your last screen. Did you use the Folio plugin in your demo?
I did not use the Folio plugin in the demo. What Folio does that's different than JIRA Portfolio is it allows you to track the financial pieces. But I did want to note that there is some good documentation out there on Atlassian's website for Folio.
Okay, great. And then I guess it might also soon be worth mentioning that Folio and Tempo have recently partnered. So you're going to start seeing a lot more of the Folio functionality in some of the Tempo add-ons, which is set to be released, I think, later this month. We have one more question. Who can move tasks between sprints? Any team member or admins only?
Admins only. You must be a project admin in order to create and execute a sprint.
Okay, great. It looks like we don't have any more questions coming in. If any of you have follow-up questions, please feel free to email them to contact@precipio.com. We're happy to answer those for you. Just a quick reminder, our next webinar is on January 28th. Our very own Amanda Babb will be co-hosting Atlassian's Confluence Questions, addressing how dev teams can leverage Confluence questions to build a knowledge base for best practices in engineering. And thank you very much. Have a great day.